All right. And Amanda, did you want to say a few words before?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming and thank Robin so much for offering to do this and for being willing to do it after I badgered her a little bit. No, I didn't have to twist her arm too hard. But just as an FYI, I still have 2 open topic spots for this semester that I'm looking to fill, and I have emailed an astronomical amount of people, and I'm not hearing much. So if anybody would be interested in developing a topic for RCR, I would be thrilled to hear from you, and I can give you guidance. But I mean, we're pretty much wide open on what topics can be covered. So anything that you're interested in that you would like to do, I'd be thrilled to hear from you. So.
So Amanda, just a question. Have you had conversations with Lonnie Cochran already?
That is not a name that I have been asked to talk about, so, or talk to.
Well, she does a lot with the research in the College of Education and
Okay.
teaching research courses and things like that. So she might be a resource for you.
Okay. I've emailed a couple of people over in education that have been mentioned to me, but she is not a name that I have heard. So I will make sure to write that down. I am really excited. You know, it's not like I don't have a list of people and topics. I do have a bunch of people who are interested in doing this. But I think that October 12th is kind of coming up a little soon. And this really isn't difficult. It's not difficult to put something together for RCR, but I think it may seem a little overwhelming on the front end. But yeah. So thanks, Robin.
Okay. You want me to take it away?
Sure. Go right ahead.
All right. Well, I know most of you, but for those that I don't, I'm Robin Saakyan, and I am the grants director on campus. And I'm going to share my screen here so that I can show you some slides as we go. Let's see. Okay. All right. Is everybody seeing my slideshow here?
Yes.
Great. Thank you to Amanda for inviting me to do this. I really enjoy speaking to these, to the faculty groupings. There have been many of them over the years, and there hasn't been one in a while. And I know many people on campus who have been around know that the grants office exists, but some people either who are new to campus or who haven't thought until maybe, you know, the present time to pursue any grants don't know what's out there. And so this is a good opportunity for me to just share what our supports are on campus. And the second thing I really want to talk about today is just some high level tips of the trade, kind of as you're getting started, or even if you've done this before, there is always room to grow, and it is a constant learning curve when it comes to grants. So I hope I'll give some tips here that will be useful for everyone today. The first thing I want to do is give you a snapshot of some of the funding that we've received over the last several years at Lipscomb grant funding. So I've broken this into 2 slides, and this is just a snapshot. It's by no means everything, but it's some of the more prominent grants that we've received. This first slide is our public funding. So primarily federal and state grants. National Science Foundation, we have now received our 3rd National Science Foundation grant at Lipscomb, and that is just in the last month. Kirsten Dodson has been awarded a research grant, which is very exciting for her. In fact, all 3 of our National Science Foundation grants have lived over in the College of Engineering. One was a scholarships grant, and I shouldn't say was, it's actually still going. It's a 5-year grant that we just renewed for an additional year to be able to spend it down. And then Stephanie Whedon-Wright and now Kirsten Dodson have received research grants from that entity. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, it has multiple arms, 3 of which I've listed there that have funded us. Some years ago, we had what we call a prime grant, which means that we were the prime recipient of that grant from the NIH. That was Clarissa Jackson's pharmaceutical research grant. But we also receive NIH funding through subawards from time to time. Those have primarily been over in the College of Pharmacy. So for example, a Vanderbilt professor that one of our professors is working with will say, okay, I've got this NIH grant, but I want you to do a piece of it, of the research or whatever. And so we will get some portion of that funding secondhand. We received a SAMHSA grant for a suicide prevention project a few years ago. We received a large grant from HRSA, this HRSA, the third one there, that supports our counseling students in their practicum. U.S. Department of Education, I saw Misty on this call, Misty Parsley. We have received a large grant. It was a 5-year project that supported our IDEAL program. And Misty and her team and I just submitted this summer another grant application to U.S. Department of Ed, and we are praying that we will get that funding as well. It would be for another 5 years supporting IDEAL. National Endowment for the Humanities, really like all of these, is a highly competitive entity to try to get funding from. We've tried many times, I might say, but we have gotten a small grant from them in the last couple of years that has supported our Beeman Library special collections. And then we've got numerous State of Tennessee grants. THEC, that's the Higher Education Commission. Several other entities within the state have supported things like our teacher prep programs. Most recently, actually, THEC and this Department of Human Services has awarded us significant funding. The DHS one specifically is an almost $2 million grant that we've just been awarded for COVID-related expenses. We're going to get to use grant funding for a bulk of the expenses that we have incurred over the last several months related to COVID, which is huge for our institutional budget. And then the second slide has some corporate and foundation funders. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but just some of the either ones that we have received for several years, that we've had a relationship with for a while, or some of the larger grants. This is just a short list of those. Let's see, and now I want to give just an overview of what are the supports on campus to help you if you want to be involved in grant pursuit. I started here, it's been almost a decade ago, well over 9 years ago, and at that time there was nobody on campus that was solely focused in their job on this kind of funding. We had our fundraisers and development that did individual donor work, work with our individual donors. We did have a person that was doing corporate and foundation relations work at the time, so that's in this area somewhat, but my job when I came on was really to try to get grants up and running. And since then, other people have been tapped to do parts of that big task as well, because building the institutional atmosphere for this kind of thing, it takes time, and it definitely takes resources and a lot of manpower on it. So what we have right now is we have an Office of Research. Some people might recall in past years, I think we're moving towards calling kind of an umbrella of everything that is revolving around research is going to be in this Office of Research that's under the Provost's office. And this office is really being spearheaded by Catherine Terry. She's working hard on this area, and Carol Lusk and Angel Bebout are also very active in the tasks of this office, one of which is directly related to my work in the grants office, is helping you once you get a grant in the financial management of that grant, just really helping you in all ways to implement your grant. I happen to sit in the Office of Advancement. That is our development office. And if you ever actually physically want to find me, once I ever get back on campus, I'm not there yet. We're still all working from home at the moment, but I think within the next few weeks we'll be back on campus. I'm in one of those modular buildings over behind Elam. So when I say grants office, that's my office, but I very much dovetail with Catherine and Carol and Angel over there in the provost office and in the Office of Research, because what I do is it's called pre-award activities. I'm helping you with your grant application and seeking the grant. And then once you get the grant, most of what's done is done out of that Office of Research in the Provost's office. Some other supports that we have for you are, we have an institutional subscription to a database that is, I mean, they've got tens of thousands of grant opportunities in this database that you can access through keyword searches and through creating a profile for yourself, where then they send you messages saying, oh, it looks like because my pre-award office is a one-man show, we wanted to have a tool that allows professors to really have the capability in their hands of searching for these grant opportunities. And so you can go to that website. I mean, you can do that in less than 5 minutes, create your account by using your lipscomb.edu email to sign in, and you'll be able to search that database. And then from time to time, depending on the complexity and how large, how scientific a proposal might be, I have called on external consultants to help me help you in developing grant proposals from time to time. And so those are the ways that we help people seeking grants on campus. So policies and procedures. There are several policies that are really must-haves for an institution that wants to be in this grant realm. And those first 4 bullet points represent some of those. So when we have been awarded by a big federal agency, we've been asked to demonstrate before taking that award that we have some of these policies and procedures. So over the years, I mean, even just developing these policies has been kind of a big push for us to get done. And so this represents steps in the right direction to continuing to provide this infrastructure that helps in grant seeking. And then in the last couple of years, I have to give the credit to Carol Lusk here. She has worked with an external consultant to develop for us a faculty research handbook. And this handbook is really, I mean, it's like a Bible for anybody who wants to do anything grants related. It's out there at this website down below. In fact, all of these resources can be found at that website. But it's got anything and everything you want to know about how we are doing grants at Lipscomb and how we should be doing grants at Lipscomb. It's in some cases it's kind of the where we want to be, and we're working that way, but it is a great resource. Other things, by the way, that can be found at that website, I don't know if anybody wants to jot that down. That is the Office of Research site. Other resources that are available at that spot are the city training that Amanda mentioned last week for RCR, information about our IRB, the Institutional Review Board, which I know is going to be discussed in a later session in this grouping of sessions. And one other thing I should mention about the Office of Research, there's an opportunity in it, I think it speaks to it there on the website as well, for faculty summer research grants. And I know that many of you have pursued those and been awarded those in past years. That opportunity will be coming up shortly, I'm assuming, as it is every year in the fall. The provost office will send out the criteria by which you can apply for those. All right, so I've structured my, how am I going to give you the tips by a couple of FAQs that I've often heard over the years. So the first one is, how do I get started? First step, if you have any inkling to work on a grant, to pursue any kind of grant funding, please contact me because I can help you. I can help you put together a timeline of how we're going to go after all the steps that have to be done. I can help you, along with Grant Forward, explore what are your funding opportunities. I can help you get the internal approvals that you need on campus to be able to apply for a grant. So please contact me. My email will be at the end of the slides. Exploring funding options, figuring out, is it a government agency that is going to be the best entity to pursue for your grant, or a foundation or a corporation. Grants.gov is another place you can go to really search for grant opportunities, but those are just federal opportunities. But I find myself there very often. That's a group of agencies that we are focusing very heavily on. And then the Grant Forward that I mentioned. Very often encourage people, especially people in the sciences, to seek out people in your field to find out, especially if they have been awarded a grant. They can give you great insights on how to go about this. They might even serve as a consultant or a mentor on your project, and sometimes talking to them about how they might be involved in your specific project might add weight to your project, especially if they are a name known through their publications and their prior funded work. Very often I'll help people get on the phone with different professors or PIs from other institutions that have been awarded the exact same grant that we want to get, and just pick their brain on their project and how they went after it. And that gives us great information to do our own proposal. Definitely be discussing internally with your colleagues in your department, with your department chair, what your intentions are, because then, as the last bullet point there says, one of our key first steps to getting started in the grant process is getting signatures on a form. Just this is for our own internal purposes, but that form goes to your department chair, your dean, and then ultimately the provost to sign off on whether or not they say, yes, this is a good idea for this person to pursue this grant under Lipscomb's name. All right, frequently asked question number 2, how do I develop my grant budget? The budget seems to be one of the biggest challenges, I think, in most grant applications. And I would argue that it is the place where you should start, at least to some extent. Maybe you don't fully develop it, but you need to have a back of the envelope idea of what your project is going to cost before you really start writing it, because it really determines the scope of the project, how much you're going to be able to spend. And on many of these grant applications that you'll be applying for, the instructions given say, you've got a maximum of $200,000 that you can ask us for, or $50,000 or $10,000. So you really need to determine, well, how much can you do with that amount of money? How many experiments can you get out of that, or how many conferences or meetings can your project conduct, based on the amount of money that you've got. Then we need to determine what inputs are necessary, and I've listed here pretty much the primary categories that most budgets have. So one of the key inputs, and I'd say probably a big chunk of the money, is often spent on the PI's time. PI is principal investigator. So the principal investigator or the project manager, and that's you if it's your grant. How much time is it going to take for you to do what you say you're going to do in this grant? Often that involves release time. Maybe if you say it's going to take 25% of your time over the course of a couple of semesters, then in those conversations with your department chair and with your dean, release time needs to be a conversation. Is that something that's doable for you to get that release time? And then even if the release time, it means that we're budgeting for the grant to pay for that, for example, 25% of your time rather than the university paying for it. It doesn't necessarily mean extra money to the PI, but it's definitely real money that needs to be budgeted in that, because the university will need to then have those funds to hire an adjunct for your classes or whatever. You can think about what other people you need involved to get your project done. Maybe it's colleagues of yours in your department. Maybe someone else has an expertise that you need on your project, or maybe it's external people. Just like I mentioned, Vanderbilt will sub to us. We can sub to other institutions if someone has an expertise that you need at another institution, or consultants or students. This is a way through grant funding. Many times a professor can give their students opportunities for research or opportunities for practice in something. And you can give that student a stipend or hourly pay for a certain period of time. Materials and supplies is another big piece of the budget. So you need to think about, what do I need to get this project done in terms of items or lab time, time on equipment, maybe in my lab or another lab. Do I need additional equipment for myself to get this done? You know, laptops often are something that people say, I need a piece of equipment that's going to be just for this project. Travel. Often some of these conferences and things that you all are very often attending each year on the university's dime, if it's directly related to your project and it's a legitimate cost for your project, we can include that in your project budget, and that alleviates things for your department for that particular year. There are other direct costs too that obviously would be related to specific projects. So these are all direct costs talking about here. FAQ number 3 is, what are indirect costs? So indirect costs are those costs that don't fit directly into some of those categories we just talked about, but they are things that, you know, keeping the lights on at the university, the office space that you use, general and administrative expenses that we have, security expenses, all these things that are more difficult to quantify as to what percentage of those is directly related to your project. And so we are allowed to, in many grant applications, to include a percentage for indirect costs. If it's a federal grant, we have a negotiated rate of 36%. And that's a pretty decent rate for example, if it's a $100,000 project, that's $36,000 that we get back to the university to help take care of the indirect costs of your grant project. So it is a benefit to the university to get to pull those costs back down. Some grant entities say we will not support indirect costs, or they say indirect costs are capped at 10%, for example, or 12%. So we've had every situation there, but this is an important thing to understand, that if the grant application says you can ask for up to $200,000, a portion of that, if indirect costs are allowed, we will capture for the indirect costs that the university incurs as a result of your project. FAQ number 4, how should I structure my narrative proposal? So we talked about the budget. There are multiple pieces of any grant application, and a narrative proposal is really the key piece as far as telling them what you intend to do. What is your project? What are you trying to do? And the first questions really that you need to answer for yourself are, what do I want to achieve through this project? I think it's best for the narrative to start with what are my goals here? What is it that I want to see take place as a result of the project? And I think it's great if this is maybe 3 to 5 bullet points, depending again on the scope of the project that we've already determined. And then the second question is, how will I achieve these goals? So what are the activities that I'm going to do in this proposed project to achieve those goals. So sections that are often required by a granting agency, and very often in the instructions that they give you, it's called a funding opportunity and announcement, or an RFA or an RFP, request for proposals. Those documents are very lengthy and very detailed many times, especially if it's a federal or a state grant. And they often will give you a template to use for preparing your narrative. These sections that I've listed here are some of the types of sections that are often asked for. I would say very rarely do you not have any kind of guidance coming from the funder as to what they're looking for in your narrative. But I think that overarching point of figuring out what your goals are and what the activities are that you're going to do to achieve those goals will help you in whatever that template is. If you can go through that process at the very beginning and then start putting the meat on the bones for whatever the other sections are that are required. Relationship building, I've touched on a couple of these, but these are some things to think about as you are developing a grant concept or a grant project. Potential collaborators, that's where those other people in your field come in. Whose expertise might I need to pull this off? And that may be that you just want their help on the front end and in developing your idea, or that may mean that you want to write them into your project and have them really work on your project as a person paid for by the grant. Potential funders. A first step, I didn't mention it in that first step slide, but a first step, depending especially on the agency, is very often highly encouraged to go ahead and pick up the phone and call your program officer. So if it's National Science Foundation, for example, they want to hear from you. They want to hear the minute you have a project concept, if you can send them a concept paper and ask them for a time on the phone to discuss, hey, is this a fit? How might I further develop this to make welcome conversations by many agencies' program officers. On the other hand, there are some entities that do not want to hear from you before you've submitted a proposal. And so we just have to, that's something that I can help you navigate. We just have to navigate which scenario is going to play out here in your project. Some of the government entities are always looking for experts in the fields that they fund to serve on their review panels. So if you can get yourself on a review panel and you get kind of an inside view of, okay, this is how they are looking at proposals. This is the type of proposal that they're funding. These are the elements that are most important to them. Then that helps you write a great proposal when you want to write to them in the future. And then we talked about with previous awardees, it's always okay to pick up the phone and call. I have had very few, if any, bad experiences in calling somebody who's previously been awarded a grant. Most of them have been very receptive to giving us advice and giving us some time on the phone. And I'm going to stop right there and just, I feel like I gave a lot of information there. If there are any questions, I'd love to just have some conversation and let you guys direct that now.
So Robin, I'll ask a question. About what's the timing, do you think, for when you fill out that initial paperwork to kind of go through the process and then actually writing for and applying for the grant?
Very good question. We have been known to be very nimble at Lipscomb in this area because we are very keen on people, you know, if you see an opportunity, we want you to be able to go after it. The ideal timing, I would say, to alert people on campus, hey, I know that there's this grant opportunity out there. I want to go after it. The ideal timing would be, I would say, at least 6 to 8 weeks ahead of time. It doesn't always happen that way. most of the funders that we are writing to, however, in order to really put forth a competitive proposal, just the time that we would need to develop the proposal is at the very least a month, I would say. So knowing that and knowing all these steps that I suggested as far as having conversations and just getting your head around the scope and the budget and are there external people I need to talk to, a couple of months is great. And in some cases, especially in the sciences, there may be a need to have a pilot type of project that has preceded this, to some baseline data gathered. And so, I mean, it could be that you're thinking, okay, I want to apply for that NIH grant or that NSF grant next school year. Let's get started now and let's go ahead and get our data lined up and let's start working with people on that. So it can vary. Anybody have any grant ideas out there that are percolating, or a particular funder that you have heard about that you're interested in learning more about? You can tell me online or you can tell me offline. I'd love for you to jot my email down there and get in touch with me after the fact if any of those things resonate, or if anything I said today resonates and you just want to have a conversation.
Well, while we're waiting for other people to say something, probably everybody on this call has worked with Robin before, but I just want to say that Robin, you're a fantastic person to work with, and the university is blessed to have you, and I really appreciate everything you do.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Well, and I hope this was helpful. I don't see all of you right now, but if I am talking to mostly people who have worked for me, I hope that I gave you at least something that you haven't heard before, maybe something that'll help in the next grant application. As I said, I mean, this area is always changing. There's always something to learn. So I've been doing this at Lipscomb for 10 years, but in my past life for about 15, I was on the other side of it, and I was working for a granting agency, actually a couple of them, doing international development work in DC. And so I saw it from that side. I mean, it's always changing. And I think it's very stimulating, actually. And in the academic world, I think it's very stimulating to you all who you have an idea, it evolves over time, and you figure out over time how to pitch it to that agency or that foundation. So it's an exciting area, and I hope that we'll feel like some people might have felt like this COVID made us take a little bit of a pause on this, but I hope we can jump right back in and have some exciting proposals go out this school year.
Do you have a place to go for resources for like grant writing workshops, sort of any of that kind of information? I know Vandy does some occasionally. I went to one last year that was really good, but I didn't know if you had like a place that you like to go to get that kind of ideas that we're thinking about.
There are a couple of companies that they've come to town and offer those types of seminars time to time. In fact, I just had an invitation in my inbox last week for one of them. I could try to find that. But yes, if there are those among you that are interested in attending that type of a thing, please let me know, because my office has pointed people to that before. Depending on budget years, I've helped fund people to go to those before. So please let me know if that's something of interest. There are definitely resources out there, and even more than I'm aware of, I'm sure. And nowadays, I'm sure that there are you track down the one that's right for you. Any other questions out there? Well, Hope and Amanda, that's all I had for today. You guys tell us what's next. I'm going to stop sharing the screen here.
Thank you so much, Robin, for walking us through all of that information. I know it's a lot, especially if it's something that you've not thought about before, to start processing how to write a grant. It's a big chunk to start thinking about. So thank you for that. The only other thing I have, we have our next meeting for RCR on October 12th. So I hope you guys will all sign up. I'm not sure what that topic is going to be just yet. I'm still working on that one, but hope you guys will all come. And again, if you guys have ideas for topics or somebody that you think would be great to cover something that you're interested in, just let me know. I'm still trying to make connections across campus for that. So I'm happy to meet whoever I need to meet to make this work for you guys.
Yeah, and Amanda and I are working on organizing all of the content. So in case there's like a week that you can't attend, but you want to watch the video and kind of get credit for it for the certification piece. So stay tuned for more information on that. And also like with the recording. So I'll upload them to the CTL YouTube channel, but then also have them kind of housed in this one repository place for us. Excellent. And get your friends to join us. This is, I love seeing your all's faces every Monday. Yeah. So thank you all so much for joining us today. And thank you, Robin, for sharing.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great rest of your day.
You all.